Hello everyone, my name is Peter. Welcome to the channel. This is going to be a video on ADHD, and actually, if you are new here, the channel is about ADHD and personal development in general. Now, I see that the channel has taken a little bit of a chaotic turn since I have, so much inspiration now that I barely can decide what to do first. And I want to do as much of it as possible, so even the quality suffers from that. So I really decided to hammer on the ADHD itself. That is where the channel started, and I really want to explore it deeply before we move to something else. So this is going to be about like 5 to 10 part series on ADHD, and the first video, this video, is going to be about what ADHD is from the objective standpoint and from the experiential standpoint. I will definitely not cover everything, and there might very well be a part 2 or even a part 3 to this very concept of what ADHD is and what it means. But for today, let's get straight into it. Welcome to PsycheBeats channel. Oh, and just as a disclaimer, I am not a psychologist, I am not a psychiatrist, I am merely a coach and a person who had to live with ADHD for his whole life. I have been dealing with depression, I have been dealing with alcoholism and other, related crazy things that I would not wish on anyone. So, these are my credentials. You can watch on your own peril. Let's get into it. To start, I would like to use a popular analogy with a little bit of a twist. I have heard, and you have probably heard this as well, it is also in the biggest YouTube channel about ADHD, the ADHD, I forgot the name, but it is a lovely channel, you would definitely find it if you search for ADHD. And the presenter said multiple times, and this is quotation from Dr. Barkley, that ADHD is like having an F1 car engine with bicycle brakes. Now, this is a very beautiful analogy. I would tweak it now with what I understand, even a little bit more. And that is why I am hesitant to call ADHD a disorder, because I do not think that you need to add that you have an F1 car with bicycle brakes. You just say you have an F1 car engine, and that's good enough. Because I believe that Dr. Barkley has probably never piloted an F1 car. Neither have I. But I have driven some fast cars that are designed to be sporty, rear-wheel drive, powerful engine. And if I have given this car to my girlfriend or to an unsuspecting driver that was normally driving 1.2 liter front-wheel drive car, they would most definitely feel like this car is disordered, even if the brakes were fine. And the F1 car is absolutely disordered even for very great professional drivers. You can watch Richard Hammond try to drive an F1 car and he sucks at it horribly, the presenter from Top Gear, because it's just so different. It is not built for driving as you would when you are going shopping. It is built for the most exciting motorsport event that there is. In someone's opinions, maybe it's NASCAR for you, maybe it's F1, maybe it's MotoGP, whatever. The point is that the car may be completely correct, the car may be perfectly built for its purpose, but if you take it out of that context and use it as a people carrier, or as an SUV, as an off-road car, or as a car that is supposed to bring you groceries, you are going to find that it is very disordered at doing that job. So with that, let's go a little bit more into theory. Now, I have mentioned this brief introduction to ADHD and what it is in my previous videos, but we can go a little bit more in detail. And the first thing I want to talk about is what actually is the difference between something like ADHD, which is a neurological thing, and depression or bipolar, BPD, narcissism, and other of these personality disorders, because there is an important difference. Now, if you have depression or if you have bipolar, what it means is that your brain is standard. It is developmentally standard to the person next to you if they are also neurotypical. But the inner functionings, the thought patterns, and the chemistry of the brain is different on the functional, operational level. Now in ADHD, even if you remove all of this, if you remove any personality disorders, even if you make a perfectly happy, extremely successful, super productive person with ADHD, their brain will still be markedly different than a normal or a neurotypical brain. So with psychological disorders, you have the standard brain that is functioning differently, probably in a way that you are not very happy with. And with ADHD, you simply have a different brain. Now, that is why it is a little bit jarring to call ADHD a disorder. Now, disorder, as I have mentioned in my previous videos, etymologically, is something that disrupts order. And for a hyperactive child, for example, this is very much true. So it makes sense to say that it is a disorder, etymologically speaking. But the order of things is dictated by our society. What we most often think of as order, as law and order, as the things that people do, is something that we are not in full control of, right? In the modern society, no one really controls where this is all going. Now, compare that to something like an older culture where there were shamans and wise men, or to cultures like religious cultures when we had most people being Christian in Europe. There was quite a clear way of living that was correct, because there was only the Christian way of living. Now, many people deviated from that, of course, but we live in a special time where there is no standard at all. So the order of things is created somehow, well, you can say naturally, if you want to use a euphemism, something positive to say about it, or you can say haphazardly. It's just created willy-nilly. Nobody really knows what they are doing, and we are just doing our best. So is there even any order per se to disrupt? It is really our decision to label a hyperactive child as disordered, because it does disrupt the order. If the parent wants some quiet and the child is hyperactive, it disrupts their order of what they imagine should be the order. But who are we really to say what should be? This is a little bit tricky, isn't it? Now, with adult ADHD, what happens is that many people, me included, run into a brick wall when trying to, fit into society, to get a job, to get education, to sit in one place and do what would be described by many parents as the boring nature of life. And ADHD people are simply not wired to accept that life is boring. We do not accept that. And we cannot hide from it, even if we use all the therapy in the world. We are perfectly functioning in alignment with how our brains are built. We are still not going to accept that the world is supposed to be still, boring, just life should just happen. And this can be called a disorder because it is very difficult to live in a society that thinks that this is the standard. Or you can actually align yourself contrary to the society and be a trailblazer. Now, this is the thing. Who is correct? Is life supposed to be a boring slugfest, or is it not? And if it is not, aren't ADHD people actually equipped better to lead an adventurous type of life? To discover something new every day? To go boldly where no one has gone before? We are equipped very well to a certain set, to a certain environment. This environment exists within the current environment, but it is not readily available if you just follow the example of others, because you are a little bit different than others. And if you want to be the same as others, there comes the medication, there comes the therapy. If you don't want to be the same as others, well, you have to decide how exactly you are going to go about it, because there is going to be much less advice for you. Now, it is the wish and the effort of many ADHD experts and YouTubers and bloggers to bring the ideas for how to live an ADHD life to ADHD people, mine included. And I don't really like the language that we use. It sounds like it is, it is like an asylum for weird people. While we really live in the same world as everyone else, and we are doing the same, possibly smaller or possibly much bigger contribution to the world than a normal person, neurotypical person. So that is the issue I see with the calling of ADHD a disorder. Now, there is absolutely nothing that I would say against the fact that ADHD can manifest as a disorder. It can absolutely ruin you. It is very serious, but serious does not mean bad. Now, to get a bit of data into it. So we already covered that ADHD is a neurological thing, a neurological difference compared to something like a mood disorder or a personality disorder. Now, what is the core symptom of ADHD? We now have split it further into inattentive type and into like the more hyperactive type. But realistically, ADHD means that your mind is going much faster than is usual. Now, that does not mean the same as IQ. IQ means that you will process actually like at the very bottom of things, mathematical problems. So you will be able to break down concepts, and at the deepest level you will be able to quickly resolve the equations that you need to resolve. And so that is why IQ tests usually test you on a lot of very abstract problems, because they want to go very close to the deepest underlying function of the brain, of the calculatory type side of brain, the really mathematical. So that is not it. What it is getting more thoughts with bigger intensity. Now, it truly is not as simple to differentiate this from just a temperamental variance. That's what, for example, Professor Peterson would say. And that is kind of true, but the ADHD only happens or is only diagnosed when this temperamental variance gets really intense. So, as I mentioned in my previous video, it does not really matter. The thing is that it is only a disorder anyway when it starts to cause you problems, and whether or not it is mainly psychological or not is a different story. Now, I actually believe that it really is the same thing, because personality is something that, that personality tendencies are really something that we should be born with, the temperament. So temperamental variance is really a different type of brain. Even when you have good conditioning, the same conditioning as someone else, psychological conditioning, you learn the same things, you were treated the same way, you will still have an underlying temperament, which is hard-coded, or like more hard-coded. In its essence, anything can be transcended, basically, but there is a much deeper hard coding than psychology. And so we have disorders like depression, then we have disorders like ADHD or autism and temperamental variance. This is all on the same level. And then we have the true self, but I won't get into that. So the underlying core symptom of ADHD is getting a lot of thoughts very quickly. It is basically super creativity, but creativity is usually associated with only the positive, with the constructive ideas, with the inspirational ideas. ADHD is not that, it is all kinds of ideas. And there really is no limit to which area you choose to go in. So if you have ADHD and you go into the negative side of things, you will spiral out of control in a way. You will be just catching comorbidities like when you are picking berries. It's very simple when you think so fast, so many thoughts. And so that is what ADHD is at its core, and all the things that are comorbid or secondary to it, like low motivation, like depression, like no concentration, no organizational skills, this is all secondary. This is all a secondary effect of all this impulsive, creative, inspired thinking. And when it goes south, or when it goes the wrong way, well, you are going to be very impulsively negative, and that means you will be depressed and all those things. So we should probably be quite happy that we get depressed. Otherwise, there would be no stopping. There would be no stopping point to our negative actions, right? If we have all these negative thoughts and we would not be stopped in our tracks by our subconscious mind, where would we go with that? It might be really ugly after a while. Because really, when you think so negatively and you are just spiraling, you will start to get really, really, really nasty thoughts about other people and yourself. And so in typical ADHD fashion, I forgot to make an outro for this video. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked, please like. If you would like to see more, please subscribe. Comment if you have any questions or anything to add. And if you are looking for coaching, I am a coach. There will be a link in the description and we can talk one-on-one about what troubles you in your life. And with that said, I will be looking forward to seeing you in the next part of the series or in another video. This has been Pete. Bye bye.